Welcome you all for the course Banking Theory Law and Practice. The topic of this session is steps in opening accounts. Of course, you know pretty well that there are so many accounts are allowed by the banker to the customer to open and keep on for their safety and security purpose. A modern banker operates different type of accounts to give the best advantage of convenience and profit to customer. A banker operates accounts to suit the requirements of every type of customer. What are such accounts? Called collectively bank accounts, accounts that are opened and operated by a banking company for the mutual benefit of both the banker and the customer. These are known as bank accounts. The popular accounts operated by banks include savings bank account, fixed deposit account, current account, etc. These accounts offer several benefits to the customer. So that we have learned a number of deposit accounts in the earlier chapters. Let's go on dealing now. What are the steps that are to be followed in opening accounts in viewpoint of bankers as well as customers we are going to realize and deal such a kind of steps and process in the opening of accounts. Let's see now. There are so many steps in opening accounts with banks. Opening a bank account is not as simple as walking up to a teller and handing over your money. It is not an easy job. You need to approach the banker first and you need to tell your purpose for which you are going to open your account and how many number of transactions you will usually do in a week or month, like according to which you will be suggested a kind of account. And creating a new account requires a bit of preparation and thought. For example, you will need to decide which type of account you want and how you want to use it and how many times you operate. How will you operate? What are the facilities that you require to operate your account? These are to be expressed to the banker. And luckily, while banking jargon can be intimidating, this process is not difficult once you know a few banking basics. That's why you are learning this banking basics as well as the steps in opening accounts with banks. Follow along step by step to set up your first account so that you will get your first account and you will tend to operate your first account so that you will get benefited for long. Step 1, obtaining letter of introduction. This is in point of your banker we are learning. So banker is supposed to obtain a letter of introduction by the customer, and from the customer he has to obtain such a letter for the purpose of opening an account. It is called the letter of introduction. The letter of introduction is to be obtained by a banker at the first stage. The first and the foremost step in opening an account for a new customer is to obtain a letter of introduction from the person who wants to open an account. A letter obtained by a banker from a prospective customer before a banker can open an account in the name of the prospective customer is known as a letter of introduction. The purpose of obtaining this type of letter is to enable the banker to ascertain the genuineness of the applicant. The letter serves as a letter of guarantee of conduct and genuineness of the applicant. Obtaining a letter of introduction is an important duty of modern banker also. The information obtained so helps the banker in confidently providing various types of services of banking and financial institution. The information is also need to obtain protection from the provisions of the various legislations that are enforced from time to time as part of carrying out the banking business. So that the banker is to be very careful in obtaining the letter of introduction from the customer. This is the step 1 in opening of accounts. Let's see what are the benefits and purposes of such letter of introduction. You need to understand what are all the benefits that the banker gain or what are the purposes for which the banker insists upon the customer to submit a letter of introduction. See, obtaining a proper letter of introduction is beneficial for the banker to know more about the new customer in different terms. These are the benefits and such are the gains and purposes for which the banker insists upon the customer to submit the letter of introduction. Such benefits are protecting against issuing checkbooks to unscrupulous persons. So first benefit is protection. The second is facilitation, facilitating the claiming of overdraft inadvertently granted by the bank. Third is to identify the people, protecting against undischarged insolvent, whether he is insolvent or solvent. It is to be identified and also to be protected by the banker. And help is another purpose. In what way? Helping to provide correct financial information about the customer, so that the letter of introduction will say about the customer complete and for what purpose he is coming and opening the account and all. Then statutory compliance is another benefit or purpose for which the letter of introduction is insisted. Obtaining the statutory protection. So that these are the benefits and purposes for which the letter of introduction is insisted by the banker. The next stage or step in the opening of account is application form. The form which is supplied by a banker will have to be filled in by the customer and submitted along with the necessary documents that are required to be provided at the time of opening of an account. After obtaining a letter of introduction, the banker supplies an application form according to the type of account which the customer wants to open. The application form contains the rules and regulations of the bank with the terms and conditions of deposit or the particular nature of the account. The application form is to be filled in and handed over to the banker. The application form will have to be filled in by the customer or the applicant and to be handed over to the banker for necessary action. That contains all rules and regulations. The applicant furnishes all details about himself, including the name, nomination, address, etc. After having submitted his application form, he has to go and approach the banker. Banker will say to put the specimen signature. In the traditional banking or in the olden days, there was a card which contained 3 or 4 lines to put or to get the sign or signature of the customer in the name of specimen signature. Now, of course, the specimen signatures are put up in the application form itself in a column or electronically, digitally. These are nowadays trending in specimen signature and getting signed by the customer at the end of the banker. What is a specimen signature? This is like a specimen signature you have to put. This is only an example I am showing. After getting the application form duly filled in, the banker obtains the specimen signature of the new customer in a separate card called specimen signature card. I said you just earlier, right? Little earlier I said there was in a traditional banking a card which contained 3 or 4 lines. Such lines will be filled in putting the signature by the customer. And every customer is expected to have read the rules of business of the bank to confirm in writing his willingness to comply with and bound by them before his account is opened. So he is required to supply his bankers with 1 or more specimen of his signature, and the bank usually enters these in a signature card maintained for this particular purpose. So banker obtains a specimen signature and keep it in record. So the customer is required to supply his bankers with 1 or more specimens of his signature, and the bank usually enters these in a signature card maintained for this purpose. The cards are filed and arranged in an alphabetical order. Each customer's name must be written in bold characters above his account in the ledger. His address and other details of occupation are also noted in the file. This is the third step in which the specimen signature is to be obtained by the banker from the customer. Step 4 is to find out the first transaction, what is going to be committed by the customer. There are different instructions that are given by the banker to the customer for operating the account. Based on those instructions, the customer has to start his first transaction. And of course, today everybody is required to open the bank account with several banks, but not with any amount. Zero balance, it is called the zero minimum balance. Zero balance account along with several facilities. For an example, Kotak offers Kotak bank account, Kotak demat account, and Kotak security trading. 3-in-1 account. Like Kotak Mahindra Bank, there are so many private and modern private banks are offering different types of savings bank account to the customers to attract the customers and also mobilize the savings, mobilize the funds from the public also. So initially a customer is to remit a minimum of 50 rupees or 100 rupees traditionally. I am saying that before 30 years. But gradually it has come to 100 rupees minimum and 500 rupees later then. And today the minimum savings bank account balance is 500 normally, but rural, semi-rural or semi-urban and urban, for which many banks are charging the customers different charges if they are not keeping the minimum balance. So that in the traditional way of banking, the banker accepts the first transaction along with the application itself, a minimum of 500 rupees or 1000 for transacting the account. Such transaction is called the first transaction of the customer. He has to remit an amount with the banker along with the pay-in slip while applying for the bank account itself. It was the traditional trend, but now modern, all these things are digitally, electronically done by the customers, offered by the banker, etc. Okay, let's see what is the first transaction. We need to know traditionally what has happened and what is now modernized. The first transaction is the first remittance of the customer with banker. After obtaining the specimen signature of the new customer, the banker opened the new account by obtaining cash from the new customer. This marks the first transaction between the new customer and the banker. It is the initial payment of the customer which is received by the banker. Of course, we are seeing in point of view of banker. So first transaction, it is not of the banker here, it is the part of customer. In view of banker, we are seeing, we are allowing, we are insisting the customer to make out the initial payment along with the application itself. So that the relationship between the banker and customer, begins after this first transaction, and wherein the relationship built in by the customer as well as the banker. Step 5, the banker will issue the checks or checkbook or pay-in slip and passbook. These are the primary facilities, preliminary facilities offered to the customer by the banker. What are all the things that are required to be done in the point of view of banker first? See, the banker issues pay-in slip, checkbook and passbook immediately after successful completion of the first transaction of the customer, and after successfully completing the first transaction with the customer, the checkbook supplied to the customer. Usually it contains 10 or 20 blank forms. These leaves are used for making payments. A checkbook contains a requisition slip which helps to get a new checkbook. Once you complete your checkbook, there will be a requisition slip attached to the checkbook at the end, which will have to be filled in, by the customer and submitted for the next and continuation of the checkbook. Then we need to see what is pay-in slip. Pay-in slip or credit vouchers are the forms used to pay coins, notes, bills and checks to the credit of customer's account. Each slip should be signed by the customer or the person who has prepared date, and the amount of the customer should be clearly mentioned. Who has prepared it on his behalf, he has to submit, and for correct accounting responsibility of the banker, first of all the customer need to provide the correct name, account number, date and the amount of the particular transaction. These are all to be clearly mentioned in the pay-in slip. The issued pay-in slips are to be preserved by the customer in number, and these are to be filled in and submitted for each and every transaction. Customer will receive a duplicate slip or counterfile with a signature and the rubber stamp of the banker. It is an acknowledgement once you submitted your transaction given by the banker, and it is also replica, a counterfile acknowledgement returned to the customer that cash etc. have been duly received by the banker noticed. The initials of the cashier is in counterfile do not in any way mean that the check etc. are in order. So the cashier will put his initial at the last for the receipt of such cash or check along with this pay-in slip, so that he put his signature in the counterfile and return it to the customer. Now all these transactions are via so many payment modes as well as net banking, so that you need not bother about. I think you would not have seen even the pay-in slip or counterfile what in it, right? Anyway, this is step 5, in which the checks are issued or checkbooks are issued, pay-in slip is given, and passbook is also given to the customer for getting entered. Now there are so many banks that are having passbook printing kiosk. That means a machine which is in front of the bank branch. You will just insert your passbook, and whenever you need, you get your printout. But between the office hours, I think. Right. This is what also happens in step 5. And step 6, operation of the account by an agent. Sometimes the accounts of the customers may be authorized to be operated by some other persons, maybe known as agent or the representative, who has to be authorized by the customer and accepted by the banker, and whose signature is also to be put in a request letter or authorization letter as specimen letter. How will they write the letter? I am herewith or hereby authorizing a person, hereby approving a person who may be operating my account in near future for such period because of my illness, because of my inability to come over for operation of my accounts, whose specimen signature is attached and verified, authorized, attested by me. Like this is like a body of the letter. A customer has to submit to the banker if at all, if he approves anybody or anybody is authorized by the customer as an agent. Right? Let's see. In case an account of a person is to be operated upon by an agent, a mandate is obtained from the customer. The banker also takes the agent's specimen signature. It should be noted that power to draw and endorse checks does not include power to accept bills or to overdraw the account. For this purpose, a special authorization should be given by a customer to the banker. Let us see the differences between the savings account and the current account. Although both savings account and the current account appear similar, They are different in many respects. What are such respects? What are the differences that exist between savings and current accounts? Why these are all happening? Because of the facility that are offered by the banker to those accounts. The savings account may be of a normal account and current account may be an abnormal account. Because the savings account operated for the savings purpose of individuals and group of people or organizations to what extent. Whereas current account is also to avoid the facility beyond the minimum balance or the balance that are required to be kept on account. For such purpose, the business people are also opening this account, so that there are different aspects in which these accounts gets deferred from each other. What are they? We are going to see one by one now. Number one difference, who prefers it? Who prefers a savings account? Who prefers current account? Or who prefers to open savings account? Who prefers to open current? Normally, the salaried people prefers the savings account, whereas the business people or industrial people prefers the current account. What are the privileges available for savings account holders as well as current account holders? The savings bank account holder enjoys limited privileges such as collection of checks, safe custody of valuables, etc. Whereas the current account holders enjoy more privileges that are offered and given by or provided by the bankers. There is a distinction because of the withdrawal. Withdrawal is limited with regard to period and amount in the case of savings account, whereas no such limitations are available for current account holders. Interest. The savings account carries a nominal rate of interest, whereas the current account usually does not carry any interest unless otherwise specified by the Reserve Bank of India as well as the banking sector. For the current account holders from 0.5% or to the maximum of 0.75 in some extent of the current account facility, not all. Objective, mostly to promote thrift and to provide convenience banking to customers. The savings accounts are opened or allowed to be opened, whereas mostly to enable conduct of business transactions the current account are allowed. So objective is to have a thrift in savings as well as to conduct the business respectively with savings account and current account. Minimum balance. Regard to minimum balance, the savings account is to be kept with a minimum balance of 500 and there is a minimum balance of 1000 fixed for the current account holders. Overdrawn facility or overdraft facility. This facility is not available for the savings bank account holders, whereas the same facility is offered to the current account holders. Reserves. For savings bank account, the savings bank account holders no need to hold reserves in proportion to the volume of deposits. Whereas there is a need to hold reserves in proportion to the volume of deposits for the current account holders. These are all the points to recap. Who prefer those accounts, privileges that are offered, withdrawal in accounts, interest offered to the account holders and objective for which the accounts are opened and minimum balance to be kept, overdrawn facility availability as well as the reserves to be kept by the holders of the accounts between savings account and current account. Let us see the disclosure of information. What is actually the disclosure of information in the opening of accounts? Ordinarily, a banker is not expected to disclose any information either about the customer or about the accounts operated by the customer. Unwarranted disclosure of information sometimes may expose the banker to certain risk. Any unwarranted disclosure is a breach of trust and the banker is liable to compensate the customer for the loss incurred. It is a qualified contractual duty of the banker not to disclose the account of a customer to anybody else. For any loss incurred to the customer, the banker is completely liable. So that the disclosure of the information about the customer should be very carefully handled by the bankers with the consent of customers only. If the customer direct the banker to disclose the information to any government department or any agency wherein he is bound to disclose the information, banker may say or send the report or statement as requested by the customer. But not always to all of the people, those who require one customer's details, the accounts and all. So that the bankers should be very careful in the disclosing of information. However, under certain circumstances, a banker is permitted to disclose information about the customer's account. What are such circumstances? Disclosure of bare facts only. While making disclosure of accounts of a customer, the banker should ensure that only bare facts are disclosed, original and direct facts are disclosed. The banker must not rely on rumors about the customer. Disclosure of fellow banker. Where a banker wishes to share any information about the customer's account, it must be given to a fellow banker or to a person authorized by the customer to receive such information. Disclosure of general information. The information of general nature only need to be disclosed. General information about the customer. This is to avoid liability in future. A clause similar to the following may be added. This information has been given in strict confidence and without any liability on our part. This is what the bankers say while disclosing the information about the customer. No disclosure of exact balance. Under no circumstances, the banker can disclose the information about the exact balance of the customer's account balance. The banker never discloses the balance of one customer to another or anybody else. Disclosure in sealed cover. Any such information may be sent only in a sealed cover. Any telephonic conversation of such nature must be strictly avoided, so that all these informations what are required by the people are to be sent only in a sealed cover, not telephonic or mobile or any mode of digital nature. So that the banker is to be very careful and keen with a bird's eye view in disclosing the information to anybody else asked about a customer. Let us see the banker's liability is what now? A banker who makes an unwarranted disclosure will be liable both for the customers and the third parties too. The banker is liable to pay damages to the customer for the loss incurred. The banker may be liable to the third parties to whom the information has been given. The banker has to compensate the third party for the loss suffered. For this purpose, the third party must prove that the banker has given the information knowing it to be false. However, the banker can escape the liability to the third party non-customer on the ground that he owes no duty to the later, so that the banker is liable for the compensation of any loss to the third party. The next point is to learn about the pay-in slip books. What is a pay-in slip book? The pay-in slip book is a book that contains printed slips with the perforated counterfoils. Printed slips with the perforated counterfoils to be filled in by the depositor or his agent at the time of depositing cash, check, draft, etc. to the credit of his account. This is only used for the deposit of money or the money's equivalent. Usually every bank prescribes and supplies free of cost separate pay-in slips for depositing cash and check and also drafts. The contents of pay-in slips include the information regarding the date of deposit, name and account number of the customer, amounts to be deposited, etc. Donatio mortis causa. What does it mean? Donatio mortis causa. It means a gift made in contemplation of death. The gift is said to be made by a person who owns any movable property and who is very ill and believes that he is going to die. This is a peculiar gift as it has a condition that it will come into operation if only the donor actually dies of the illness. Otherwise, it will be taken back. These are the conditions for such gift. But if he recovers from the illness, the gift is to be returned. Printed check forms. You know about printed check forms. Printed check leaves of 10 or 20 in nature will be in a bunch, will be given to or will be supplied to a customer by a banker. There are so many merits in a printed check forms. Using the printed check forms, you will enjoy, being a customer, you will enjoy the merits and advantageous points in using it. A check drawn on any paper is legally valid. In England, banks honor checks even when they are not drawn on forms supplied by them. However, when the customer draws a check on ordinary slip of paper, the banker must be careful to see that it is an unconditional order. Otherwise, the banker would lose the statutory protection. But it is to be noted that using plain papers to write checks will prove risky for the paying banker. Hence, the bankers always insist on using the printed check forms to enable the customers to get benefited of all the services and also the advantages of using printed check forms. What are such advantages? Let's see one by one. One is easy and convenience. Easy and convenience of writing a check. Only the relevant columns need to be filled in. Avoidance of forgery. This is to avoid forgery and also hence safety to banker and customer too. Easy detection of fraud in a printed form is possible. Ensure that the signature is drawn only according to the requirements of law. Legally, the signature is put in. Facility of verifying the customer's name by referring to checkbook issue record. Easy countermanding of checks by the customer. It is enough if the customer instructs to countermand the check number to the banker in case of fraud or in case of any misappropriation. The counterfiles kept by the customer can be used as a record of payment made to the customer. Popularity of name of the company or the individual where the names are printed on the check. These are all the advantages which can be enjoyed by a customer using the printed check forms. Let us see about the passbook. What is actually the passbook? This is a passbook. A passbook, a compact book issued to every customer of a bank in which all the entries regarding deposit made by a customer into the account and withdrawal payment by a bank out of the account of cash and checks are made is known as a passbook. The entries are made in the passbook either manually or in print. But in modern times, however, all entries are made in the passbook using printers. The passbook contains all entries. The entries are thus clear and legible. Today, everybody is taking the printout using the passbook printing kiosk, a machine. If you insert the passbook, the machine will print it and give it back in few seconds. Either manually or in print, all entries are made in the passbook by the banker. What are such entries and the effect of such entries? Let us see the entries. According to Sir John Paget, the proper function of a passbook is to constitute a conclusive and unquestionable record of the transactions between the banker and the customer, being they have the relationship of banker and customer. And it is moreover a professional relationship. According to him, the purpose of passbook is to help mitigate the loss on account of negligence or recklessness on the part of either the banker or the customer. The effect of entries made in the passbook might be either favorable to the customer or to the banker in some aspects. What are such aspects? We are going to see the aspects and difference of the entries favorable to customers as well as favorable to banker. Entries in the passbook are considered to be advantageous to the customer if the passbook shows wrong credit balance, a balance larger than the actual balance in the ledger account. Such entries are prima facie evidence against the banker but not conclusive evidence. The banker is therefore not debarred from opening the entry and recovering the money the same from the customer for wrongful credit or payment. The banker, however, cannot recover any part of the money which has been spent by the customer in good faith, relying upon the accuracy of the entry. The burden of proof, however, lies with the customer to show that he had acted in good faith. In the same manner, where a customer issues checks relying on the entries made in the passbook, it will not be possible for the banker to dishonor them. It is the duty of the banker to inform the customer regarding the mistake and rectify the same. If in the meanwhile any checks are drawn, the banker should honor the checks provided the balance wrongly shown permits it. If the banker dishonors such checks, he will be liable to the customers for wrongful dishonor. These are all the favors to the customers because of the entries made in the passbook. And what are the entries favorable to bankers? This is what also to be seen simultaneously. The entries in the passbook are considered to be advantageous to the banker. If the passbook shows wrong debit balance, a balance lower than the actual balance in the ledger account, such entries are detrimental to the customer, and the customer is entitled to have such an entry reopened unless he has indicated by his conduct that he regards the account as settled or has been so negligent in his duties to banker that it would be inequitable for the banker to be required to reopen the entry. If the customer had a duty to examine the entries in his bank statement or passbook and to report any incorrect entries to the banker, it would follow on this reasoning that he would not be entitled to have an incorrect entry reopened if it could be shown that he had carried out the duty negligently. So that a customer is to be very careful being with the banker in the relationship of banker and customer, and also to adhere all the rules and regulations. These are all the entries which are favorable to bankers. Both customers and bankers are favored by the entries which are entered into the passbook, and the effect of such entries will either favor to a customer and unfavor to banker, vice versa. There are some legal implications. The legal implications of entries found in the passbook which may be dealt in seriously. What are they? The passbook is not an evidence of settled account because the legal opinion is in favor of the person who is affected. It's not an evidence. There is no duty on the part of the customer to examine his passbook. Passbook is of course entered by the banker or bank's machine today. The banker cannot therefore take to his favor when no comment was received from his customer about the unfavorable entries. If anything is noticed by the customer as unfavorable entries, that has to be taken care by the banker and to be rectified in due course. The customer is not bound to check the entries in the passbook. He cannot be accused of negligence if he fails to draw the attention of the bank to the wrong entries made in the passbook. If the banker succeeds in establishing customer's negligence and where the banker is affected, the court may give legal recognition for the same. So that the banker as well as the customer, both of them are to be very much careful in maintaining their passbook. Only an express agreement with the customer will constitute a settled account. Right? These are all the legal implications of entries found in the passbook. We will see now the banking practice regarding the entries made in the passbook as well as maintenance of the passbook. Actually, the entries are to be made in the passbook by the banker very carefully. Any negligence on the part of the banker would result in wrong entry in the passbook, either favorable to the customer or to the banker it would be. So wrong entries, besides giving rise to legal problems, spoil the banker-customer relationship, which acts as a building block for enhanced banking business. In view of this, it is customary for the banker to adopt certain best practices for the benefit of the customer and also for themselves. What are such practices? What are the best practices that could be practiced by the banker to maintain such a relationship very carefully between themselves and customer? Let us see. It is the duty of the customer to scrutinize the accounts. If errors and omissions are not brought to the notice of the banker, if the accounts are stated to be a settled one, and negligence on the part of the customer will not make the bank responsible, and bank send a statement of account. The bank may send a statement of accounts attaching an acknowledgement as to its corrections. The customer will be requested to sign and return a certificate of correction. Unless otherwise, it will not be accepted and approved by the bank. These are all the fundamental ideas as well as the practices that are in point of view of banker we saw regarding the opening of accounts, maintaining the entries in the passbook, and also practicing the banker-customer relationship means of different tools. I hope you would have understood every component of this topic and would be able to answer the questions also. Take care and wish you all the best.